This is the Primary Stages Off-Broadway Oral History Project. Today we are talking to Dr. Glory Van Scott, producer, director, actress, singer, dancer, composer, playwright. It is Wednesday, August 7, 2019. Welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.
Where did you grow up?
Chicago and New York.
Tell us about, well, first we're Chicago, right?
Yes.
Tell us about growing up in Chicago.
In Chicago, I was studying dance and creative writing and theater and music at Abraham Lincoln Center, which was a cultural arts center, and it was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. So right away, as a little kid, we were learning about architects and people who were doing different things than what we were doing as kids. And in that particular place, there was a library on the first floor. And I was very attracted to that because we read all the time in my family. We used to have reading circles with my parents sitting, and each kid had to read. So you couldn't kind of fluff over that you kind of know something. It was your turn to read, you'd be handed the book, okay, now you've got to read out loud. And so, we fostered a love of books and literature as a result of that, which I to this day have. And so it was an exciting thing because we were taken to everything. We went to see ice skating, we went to the theater, we went to concerts, the Civic Opera Company. My mother loved opera, so we were taken everywhere. And so we were exposed to the arts and exposed, although my mother was not an artist, my father was not an artist, my father was a physician, my mother she stayed home, she had been a nurse, but she really was home with us and doing her social commitments. And we were really into life. That's how I put it. We were into life. And into also paying attention to other people who didn't have what we had and recognizing your responsibility to do something if you could to help people in the world. So I grew up knowing that you didn't just take it for granted and you had this and you had that, but you were aware of other people and you just quietly helped them in some way. And I saw my family doing that. Even when we got to be grown up, my youngest sister took care of a family for a year that had gotten burned out and had 2 little boys. And so she absolutely paid for them for dinner and things of that sort, food and clothing for 1 year. And that family got back on its feet. And those boys, I think, now graduated from college, everything. So it was a sense of responsibility that didn't stop just with yourself, but what you did with yourself to use things that you knew and the way in which you've been brought up to help other people. That was fostered in my family. And it's with me all the time. If you see somebody you want to help.
And you were very attached to your grandmother.
My grandmother was the love of my life. She was a small Choctaw Indian woman that was loving and wonderful. She was a designer. She used to design clothes. And I was so attached to her. And the reason is that when I was born, apparently, with me, you couldn't just feed the baby, pat the baby, make sure the baby's warm and okay, and put me in a bassinet and think I'm just going to be there. I'd start yowling, so I wanted attention. I wanted, what's going on? And so I cried, and so people told my dad that when he went to work, I cried. And so he sent for my grandmother, which was my mother's mother, who came from Mississippi and entered our household, and I bonded with that lady, and it was extraordinary. She always was the one that I had my mom and dad there, but that was different. My grandmother was the light of my life. And I sometimes think of her and snuggling up to her when she's reading a story to me, and then she'd say, now you read it back to me. And then she'd give me the book, and then I'd read the story back to my grandmother. It was that sharing. Everything was called sharing. And that the growth and the care for you and the love for you, which you knew and never doubted, that made all the difference in the world. And my grandmother was my point in my family. I love my mother, I love my dad, but my grandmother was it for me.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
2 brothers and 3 sisters.
And were they performers or
my brother,
artistic?
My oldest brother, Jerry, had been a child movie star. He was in, if you see a film called Thrill of a Romance with Esther Williams and Van Johnson, he was the young bellhop that sang. He was a tenor, and he had two solos. He sang Please Don't Say No and Because. And his teacher was Lawrence Melchior, the tenor. So it was wonderful. He kind of coached him along, but he was extraordinary.
How did he end up with that job living in Chicago?
Because his teacher in Chicago knew people in Hollywood and different places, and he was auditioned, and that was what happened. And so what happened is that Mayer, L.B. Mayer, he heard the voice and he said, "Oh my goodness, we'll have this little kid," and it was my brother. So my brother used to walk around the house singing. I'd follow behind him, copying what he was doing. So it was, that challenge was there. My other brother, he danced, he loved to dance, but my oldest brother's talent was so big that he was the one that went zoom like that. And he went to Hollywood, and when he came back from Hollywood, he didn't want to do it anymore. He said, "I don't like it," and so my parents said, "Okay, you don't like that, you don't have to do that," and stuff like that. But that he was the one that I would watch his talent. And yet I started studying at a cultural arts center, the Abraham Lincoln Center, and I was studying all of these arts and loving it. I lived for the time when during the week when I went to the classes.
And was your high school at the art center, or was it public school and then the art center?
No, the art center was separate.
That
it
was
a huge. Now it's a college, but it's a beautiful building, and the architecture is Frank Lloyd Wright, which I said. And also there was a camp, Abraham Lincoln Center camp, that also was Frank Lloyd Wright, the architecture. So, and that was in Milton Junction, Wisconsin. So summers I'd go up, I'd be up at the camp, and it was filled with the arts, completely filled with the arts. That's what we were doing. And it was a life of my learning so much, because the people who were the teachers, when I reflect, they were really Quaker people. And I remember one teacher that I had, and her name, and I only remembered her name maybe 6 months ago or something. Her name was Helen Sadataki. She was Japanese, and she had been interred from the war. And it was she who explained to me all the things and what all that was about. And that was one of my teachers. Other teacher was from this place, another teacher's from that. But they were all, when I think about it, that's who they were. They were busy teaching you how to be in life and things that you would do and what was going on in life. It was incredible. I really was very, very lucky. And then one of the teachers I had was John Green, and he sang with Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was his friend, and of course he had Paul Robeson come to Abraham Lincoln Center and sing for our music class. And I remember, Mr. Robeson walking in, and I'm this little kid looking up, and he was I called him the tall tree. He'd walk in, and of course we curtsied, and things like that. It was extraordinary.
How old were you when Paul Robeson visited
I was
school?
a little kid, so I had to be like 7 or something like that, 6. I was little, but I remember the whole experience. We knew he was coming to our class, and we were prepared for it. But the people that were the teachers and worked with us, they prepared us for life. This wasn't just, okay, we're going to do something. If you want to be a professional, you're being trained to be one if that's what you want. If you want something else, you will use the fact of having this excellence of their teaching to take you towards something else, and you will remember that you use that to do whatever you have to do. And I remember John Green, he was the one, my music teacher. I learned, Lieder, German Lieder there singing, I was 6 years old, I was learning how to sing like that. And when I produced for years an evening of spirituals with classically trained singers that sang spirituals. And now and then I'd break out and go, all right, I start singing this, or where did you learn that? I said, I was 6 or 7 years old, and I learned, I've never forgotten it. And they said, who was it? The teacher I had. And that teacher was extraordinary, because it was classical music we were learning. And then I remember when that teacher was going to be leaving the Cultural Arts Center, and I didn't understand, why are you going? And I was standing in the lobby talking to him, and he said he had to leave because he didn't have a degree a college degree, and therefore he was going to have to leave, and there was another man coming in who had a college degree who was going to be put in his position. And I'm standing there, and I remember crying and thinking, but that doesn't make sense. Why are you? And he said he was going to be moving to California. And I remember, and I was maybe 11 years old or something, and I looked at him and I said, I recognized that he was indeed an artist. And I said, this will never happen to me. I know now why you really do have to go on, you complete college and do all those things. You have something backing you up so you're not left in that position. If he had a piece of paper saying that it was a bachelor's degree in shuffling papers, he could have stayed. And the whole concept of what education really, really meant came down to me in that way. Even though parents are always saying, well, you grow up, you go to college, you do this, do that. Sure, you knew that people around you were doing that. But it was hearing this great artist, this great tenor, Mr. Green, tell me why he was leaving the Cultural Arts Center because he didn't have this piece of paper. And I'm thinking, yes, and I knew at that point, I already knew I was an artist. I knew it from a little bitty kid. And I thought, and I literally ran through my mind, this will never happen to me. I know I will finish college because I am not going to be in a position that if something happens, I can't have a job that I want.
You continued in Chicago through high school, through your graduating from high school.
Yeah, but what I did was then, by the time I came to New York through a scholarship for the Encampment for Citizenship.
Well, tell us about that.
It was for young citizens, and it was started by Al Black. It involved teachers that were lawyers or doctors or whatever. They were all within professions, and they were going to be teaching at the encampment and teaching young citizens how to live together. Kids from the South who had never been with kids of color coming to the North to be a part of this, kids from abroad who had never been with American kids or this, all over, and scholarships, and you had these classes, and you were there, and you'd be there for, what were we there, 6 weeks or something? It was unreal.
How old were you when you did this?
I was a teenager doing that.
You were still in high school back in Chicago?
No, I had come out of it and just maybe like 16, 17, like that.
I see. Okay.
And I was going to do this program.
And this was the program Eleanor Roosevelt was involved with?
Yes, she was one of the people on the board and very much involved in that. And Al Black, who is New York Society for Ethical Culture, one of the leaders from that. And so therefore, you began to learn humanist ways of dealing with the world and with each other. Mm-hmm. And kids from everywhere, kids who never were living with kids that were from many different places. And you were all together, all day, all night, working, doing what you were doing, having classes. And they broke us up into individual groups. This group with this particular teacher leading it, that teacher leading this group, whatever. And I was with a group with Dave Rothenberg, and you might know Dave Rothenberg, who started the Fortune Society. Mm-hmm. Now, he and I became like this, and we were the two in our discussion group. They said, those two get going. We talk. It was incredible. And it was that learning and that paying attention to other people from other places, really paying attention, discussing, talking to them, even if they spoke a different language and yet they had learned English, and find out about their lives and your life, and learning to live with people that you never lived with before and understand. And all of a sudden you have a different world. Your brain starts opening up like this. You start looking around and you realize, and that's where I said the world is my country. And I've never lost that. The world is my country. So wherever I go, I never feel like I'm a stranger. No matter what country I go into, whether they're speaking my language or not, I never feel like I'm a stranger. Because behind that language, there's a human being with feelings like yours, with mom, dad, all the other things. They're speaking a different language, maybe they're eating different food, maybe their schooling is different, but it's a human being behind that. And so therefore it's always to find that human being that's behind it, no matter where I am in the world.
And then did you stay on in New York after
Yeah,
the?
I decided I was going to stay in New York, and much to my mother was like, "What?" Because you see, what happened at the Cultural Arts Center in a performance that I was doing, there was a woman whose name was Gloria Algeman. She was in Richard Wright's, what was the name of the big production that Richard Wright, in a book that he did, Native Son. And she was an actress, and she was also teaching drama. And she said to me, "When you go to New York, Glory, you must not come back." She pulled me aside and she said, "I'm telling you, you must not come back. You must be there because that's where your life is with your talent," she told me. And I listened to her, and I went and told my sister and my grandma, and we concocted this that I wasn't going to come back. Nobody else in the family knew.
So you had planned, if you were going to be there for the 6-week school program, that after that you weren't going to come.
Visit my family later, but I was going to live here in New York because, first of all, I was going to go to the professional schools and get things together like that because I knew I was really a dancer, and I knew that's what I wanted. And there was no point in coming back to Chicago. I've gone as far as I could go in Chicago, unless you want to do regional theater, and I wasn't interested in doing regional theater. I wanted Broadway, and I sang, I danced, I acted, and I considered myself the sepia Mary Martin. She does all that, I'm doing that too. So it was no such thing as like being shy or something. Yeah. And I literally thought, when I came to New York, I thought everybody, if you sang, if you danced, you also sang, you also acted, because that's where the kids I grew up, they were highly competitive, and that's what we did in the Cultural Arts Center. You acted, you sang, you danced, and you may have had a preference for one thing or the other, but you developed those things. And so I thought everybody had them all developed. So if I go to an audition for dance and they say, "Now can you sing?" "Yes, I can." Boom, out comes Elle singing, So that was what I came with, and that's how I was feeling. But Cecily Tyson came up to the encampment for citizenship, and they told her about me. And so I met her, and so she said to me, she said, "Oh, you want to be this actress, you do this acting?" In Chicago, they used to call me the sepia Betty Davis, all those things, right? So I said, "All right." So she said, "You must go and meet my teacher, her teacher." Her teacher was Vinette Carroll, who is a very famous director, black director. Said, "You got to meet Vinette Carroll." And that had been Cecily's teacher. And I said, "Okay." So she said, "I'm going to give you her number. You call her, and I'm going to tell Vinette to look for your call. And maybe you audition for her, and if she likes you and takes you on as a student, you already start moving ahead in terms of acting." So I did exactly that. I said, "I'm staying in New York." I called Vinette Carroll. I went and had an audition, and so she began to train me privately, and in terms of acting, and also in terms of directing, all this. And then voila, years later, I'm doing shows and everything else with her. But
where were you living when you first came to New York?
Well, after the encampment, I went to the Y downtown, Spelman Hall, and they had kids from everywhere. Those girls are from everywhere.
That was the
607 Hudson Street.
Women's Y?
Yeah.
Oh, 607 Hudson Street.
607 Hudson Street.
Where was the facility for the encampment?
It was up at Fieldston, up in Riverdale. So we were there. And then after that, I scurried down fast.
And did the work studying with Vinette Carroll happen right after you finished the encampment? You went right over to that?
Yeah. What happened is that when I finished with the encampment, and then I said, so then I stayed with Fran and Bernie Wachowski, who were like godparents, and I stayed with them for a bit while I'm looking, and then, okay, we found the Y. This is an international Y, one that I would be very comfortable at, because I'm used to all kinds of people, and went down to Hudson Street, and I love that Y. Oh boy, kids were bursting at the seams to do things, and I was one of them too, And then I said, and I loved the area. I'd never been to the Village, and the Village was like, look at the people down here. Look at the clothes they're wearing. I like all this stuff, So I got all excited, but that's an off-Broadway. That's an off-Broadway theater. Seeing the Broadway, it was. Let me see, It was like I can remember a green and white striped pair of pants that I saw in the shops down there in the village, because I hadn't seen this kind of thing. I had been, Papagallo, I'd been into things like that, and very much I was looking in those shop windows and seeing things that I'd never seen before, capes and stuff like that. Oh, that's marvelous. Because the whole theater was being unleashed. The whole thing of the creative artist was bubbling. And all of a sudden I'm walking down the streets and look at this one, those kind of shoes. And I mean, the village was hopping, So, and it was magic time. I would trade none of it. None of it. The exposure, what I see, because I was very much a kid, that did the right thing. You're supposed to do this and that. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing kids say, "No, they're not going to wear those shoes." So I was going to wear some sandals. Oh, they're going to wear some sandals. Let me get some sandals. Just a world opened up to me. And then the kids were coming from. They were from all countries at that Y. So you'd say, "Oh, these ones from that," and you met friends, and you had a ball. You had a ball. And so that was the thing and so then it's like, I heard that Tally Beatty was auditioning. Tally Beatty's company, where they were auditioning dancers, he was going to be performing at the Open Door. And I said, oh, and I said, well, and meanwhile, what I did is I said, I'll go to the Martha Graham School. And I went to the Graham School for dance, and I didn't like the Graham School for dance because I liked to watch it, but I didn't want to dance that technique. And so somebody said, well, have you been down to Dunham School? Where is it? I said, okay, I'll go over there. And now I had seen Katherine Dunham's work because I'd seen Tally Beatty's work when I was a kid. Went to the Goodman Theater, and Tally Beatty's company was performing. And I was like, my teacher took about 6 of us little girls, and I was like, bowled over in Chicago. I was like, oh, that's how I want to dance. But I didn't know that's what that technique was at that point. Now I'm in New York, and I am like, okay, they told me Dunham School. I go to the Dunham School. I get to the Dunham School, and the first thing that happens is that Pearl Reynolds was behind the registration desk, and I come in with my hat box and my little nose like that. And so she said to me, oh, you want to take dance? I said, yes, I want to. She said, well, have you had the Dunham technique? I said, I'm a dancer. Dummy that I was at that point. What do you think? Yeah, I haven't had that technique. And I said, well, I'm looking at her like, what do you mean? I'm a dancer. So she said, uh-huh. She said to me later, she said, I'm going to either love this kid or hate it. It's not going to be any, because I was looking at her like, what do you mean? And so she said, okay, you want to start taking classes? And she was saying, you have to start with the beginner's class. And I was like, incensed, because I thought, hello, the beginner's class? She said, go take a look through the window down there in the door of the classroom. I go down there, I look through it. I said, oh my God, I don't know that technique, but that's the one I've been looking for, and that's the one I wanted. It was the Katherine Dunham technique. And they were working. So then I said yes, and so next thing you know, the next day I was back and in those classes, and within a short time I got into the experimental group, with Dunham Experimental Group, and and began there. Now Tally Beatty is auditioning. He had been a Dunham dancer. He's auditioning for his company. And I said, okay, let me go and do that. And I auditioned, and I got into his company. And that's when I began to look at the veteran dancers that were so spectacular in the performances, in the way in which they carried themselves, everything. And I was like, just enjoying every bit of it and learning from them. And they tell you, well, you do this or you do that. Okay. And you just learned. And so then, not soon after that, I heard that Balanchine was auditioning dancers for House of Flowers, the Broadway musical. And so I said, oh, well, I'll mosey around and go over there, which I did. And I took the first audition, and then I said, okay, so they told me that they were inviting me back to come back to the second audition. So when it's time for the second audition, I figured, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get in the back of the line so I can watch everything 20,000 times before it's my turn to do it. And what does Balanchine says? And Glory Van Scott, I want you to lead the line. I didn't even know he knew my name, but he pegged me from when I first came to that first audition. Because I'm this right body that he liked. And I'm like, what? And my mind said, kid, you either do it now or it's over. And so I came into the front of the line and did it, and I got the job. And that's how, when I got that job, who else is going to be in there? Arthur Mitchell,
That's an amazing group.
Louis Johnson, Jeffrey Holder, Carmen de Lavallard, Hugh Dilworth, Pearl Reynolds. I mean, it was the most extraordinary thing. And I mean, it just that all of us were together. And people to this day ask me, what kind of water did they give you guys? I said, what do you mean, what kind of water? Same you had out of the faucet. And they asked, they said, what kind of water? They were giving you guys because all of you did this. I said, well, I expected they were doing that now. We were all doing these many 50,000 things. But it was normal for us.
But they were the singers and dancers for the show, right? All of these wonderful people who went on to...
Well, yes, but the thing is that if you're going to think about what Arthur Mitchell did with his life, if you think about what Louis Johnson did with his life, what I've done with my life, what Jeffrey Holder did with his life, what Hugh Dilworth, who wound up being a manager for Leontine Price, and all these people doing and creating and doing things, and Walter Nix, and going back, speaking 2,000 languages and teaching all in Sweden, everywhere, and doing all these things, they were extraordinary people.
Mary Louise, Diane Carroll,
Yes.
Hugh Dilworth. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was an amazing... Jeffrey Holder,
yeah,
Alvin Ailey,
yeah,
in that cast.
Alvin, who called me Sugar Lover, that was his nickname for me. He always called me Sugar Lover because there was a line in the show.
So, and the director of House of Flowers was
Balanchine was doing the choreography, and they got Herbert after that, and also it was what's his name from England.
Peter Brook.
Peter Brook, yeah. Uh-huh. And then finally he left, and they called Herbert. What was Herbert's last name?
Ross?
Yes.
Herb Ross?
And they called Herbert Ross.
Yeah. And the book was by Truman Capote.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Am I right there in Harold Arlen?
Yeah. Music. Mm-hmm.
And that was 1954. Yeah. And then what happened after the House of Flowers experience? That was Broadway.
Yeah, after the House of Flowers experience... Let me see. I went into doing some other shows and things in there. I was doing things and companies doing things. And then eventually wound up auditioning and going, then I started doing TV. I did Belafonte TV specials and things like that. A lot of TV. I was doing
variety shows.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff like that. Lots, and I think about it, and I forgotten about that. A whole host of TV shows. Look Up and Live, CBS. We're doing some CBS stuff, Channel 13 stuff. We're doing a lot of TV.
And then you went into another Broadway show in '61, which was director Bobby Lewis.
Yeah, I love that. Kwamina, I was the principal dancer in that.
Kwamina?
Kwamina.
Uh-huh. And tell us about that.
I was auditioning for a show called... I was a principal dancer in Porgy and Bess at City Center. And Agnes DeMille came to the theater. Somebody told her about me because she was getting ready to do Kwamina. She was a choreographer. And she was looking for a female principal dancer. And somebody told her about me. So she came to the theater, and she saw me. And she came backstage, and Jimmy Wall, who was the stage manager, knocked on my door and said, Glory, Agnes DeMille is out here to see you. I said, what does she want? I mean, I would do things that nobody in the world did, and yet wind up with jobs. I mean, it's just one of these strange things. I said, what does she want? He said, well, she wants to see you. Now, the door is still closed. I haven't opened the door. I'm talking through the door at City Center in my dressing room. Oh, she wants to talk to you. So I'm like, okay, opens the door. There stands Agnes DeMille. Young lady, my name is Agnes DeMille. I'm doing a new Broadway show called Kwamina, and I'd like you to be my principal dancer. Can you come to my office, which she had a studio rather, in Carnegie Hall? Can you come to my office? And I said, a couple of days, and I said yes. And she went away. Now, in the interim, I go and I see her, and she wants me to come, and she said, what date to come, sign contracts, da-da-da-da. I said, yes. I walk out of her office. There was another Broadway show that was coming up at the same time called Kicks and Cole. And that was by Oscar Brown Jr. Some of my friends were auditioning, they were going to be in that, and I was thinking, well, I really want to be in Kicks and Cole. Now, what kind of lunacy have you got in your head when somebody's asked you to be the principal dancer? They've seen you perform, they want you as a principal dancer, an illustrious woman, a marvelous woman, and you're being saying, well, I got some cronies in the other show. I would do things like that all the time. I don't know how I have some cronies in the other show, and I want to be in Kicks and Cole. I auditioned for Kicks and Cole. Was there all day, got down to the wire. Well, thank you very much, Glory, but we decided to go with somebody else. So I go home and I said, this is terrible. I was there all day and I didn't get into Kicks and Cole, mind you. Now, this is on a Friday. Saturday morning, my telephone rings. Kicks and Cole, they went over a lot of stuff and decided, no, they really wanted me to be in Kicks and Cole. And I said to the stage manager, I said, I'm sorry, but I have another job. And and so thank you very much, but no thank you for the one you're trying to offer me now. And I hung up. Now, the next day when I'm supposed to go and sign a contract, I go over to right near where the theater is. They were still auditioning some dancers for Kwamina. And I go over to near where the theater is, and I'm sitting in a coffee shop drinking a Coca-Cola. Slurp, slurp, slurp. And different dancers would come by and see me and say, Glory, Agnes DeMille's looking for you. She's saying, where's Glory? Where's Glory? You over here in this? I'll be over there in a minute. I'll be over there in a minute. I'm drinking my Coca-Cola and have a grilled cheese sandwich and just sitting there. And different dancers are coming by saying, she keeps asking, where are you? I said, I'll be there. Now, I finally go into the theater. And Agnes said, come down, sit next to her. I sit down. And I said, I really wanted that part where the ingenue, she sings and she does this. She said, well, Ethel Ayler is going to be doing that singing part, da-da-da. But she said to me, I tell you something. She said, I promise you, as my principal dancer, if you sign this contract, if you are unhappy, I will personally see that you will be able to get out of your contract without a problem. Fine. I said, that's fine. I heard that. I went in, and she said, and I promise you, you will not be unhappy. And I went and signed the contract. What happens when the show opened? I walked away with all the reviews. That's the way in which she choreographed for me and what. The headlines were mine. So this is what I'm talking about. You never know what's there for you. And I was busy trying to go the other way in all kinds of ways. It's like, that makes no sense. I do things like that a lot.
You then went into, at the same year, Showboat at City Center.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about that.
Showboat was fun. It was, I liked it. It was a lot of fun in terms of the music and the singers. To listen to those incredible singers who had those incredible voices. I liked that. And I had a lot of fun with that. And I remember one thing that I didn't like, it had nothing to do with Showboat, but I never liked leopard skin, and it dated back to my mother, who was very into having kids look chic. She had a leopard skin coat snowsuit for me. The coat was leopard skin, the pants were fabric, and it had a muff that went with it and a pointy hood, which I couldn't stand. And Chicago gets very, very cold. So when my sister and I were going down the street. We were going to Sunday school, and so my sister's going with me. My sister was not going to be seen with me in that leopard coat. No way. No matter, my mother thought it was very elegant, but my sister said, "Boo, we take you down the street. We're going over to Sunday school. You with that leopard coat." And I didn't want to either. So we'd get out there in Chicago. It's like 10 below zero practically. She'd get me around the corner, and she'd take it off and turn it on the other side because it was reversible. And I'm freezing. So one night I didn't get pneumonia doing that because I couldn't stand that coat. Okay, now, finally, I grew out of it, and so my little sister says, "I'm not wearing it," boom, that's the end of it. So I didn't like leopard. So now I get into Showboat, and there's a whole piece in there called The Homie that's marvelous. And I heard they're going to have some leopard something, and I said, "What? I hate leopard," da 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 da. And then when they did it, it was a marvelous little suit, and you had a little tail hanging there, and you had little bunny ears, and it was adorable, and I liked it. And that was the first time and only time that I started to like leopard, but it had to go back to, I couldn't stand leopard as a little kid. But, I had fun in Showboat. There were a lot of people in it, and a lot of singers that you like to listen to them sing and hear them and stuff. And we had fun. It's a fun show.
Along about this time, you did Fly Blackbird off Broadway, where you first met Mickey.
Yeah, I first met Mickey Grant and Avon Long, who was Sporting Life and Corgan Best, who was just one of the best in the world. People were very gifted. And Mickey sat next to me. I liked her when I first met her, and so she sat next to me in the dressing room. And I got to know her. And I said to Mickey, she said, "Oh, I write music." I said, "Oh, you write music? Oh, well, let me hear something." So she said, "Will you come over?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go over." She'd come over to the house to have lunch one day. I went over to the house to have lunch, and so she took out her guitar, and she started playing some of the songs that she'd written. I was completely enthralled and enamored listening to it. I said, "This is beautiful. I love the way you write. I love it." Now, she had not met Vinette Carroll. And I said, "I want you to meet Vinette Carroll because I have a show I'm supposed to do at Lincoln Center, Library of Performing Arts. And Vinette Carroll is going to be doing something, and so I want you to meet Vinette Carroll because maybe she'll love your work as I love it. I'm sure she will." Okay, we made an arrangement the following Sunday to go to Vinette's house. Mickey brought her guitar and music, and so while we're sitting there, and Vinette made us some health shakes, and we're drinking all this stuff, and Mickey started to play these songs, and Vinette Carroll loved them, and one, and to the point that she said, "Oh my God, well maybe I'll put together some of these songs, and we can do a thing at Lincoln Center, and so how Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope got its name is this. In the break, while we're sitting there yakking about, could use some of Mickey's songs, make up something, Vinette, and figure it out, I told them a story about a friend of mine, Gene Krulis. Gene Krulis had a new car, drove to New Jersey, and some lady in the back of her banged into the back of her new car, who had a mile-long Cadillac, banged it. So Gene gets out of her car like, "Oh no, you hit my new car," and starts walking toward the lady in the Cadillac, and the lady in the Cadillac sees Gene coming, rolls down her window and goes, "Don't bother me, I can't cope." So we were hysterically laughing about that and the reason the woman couldn't cope is that the catering car was not supposed to be in New Jersey. She's on some rendezvous, and her husband didn't know anything about it. There was the problem. But what do we know? So that's where Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. So Vinette said, "That's a good name to make the song. Mickey, write a song about Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. Do this." And that's how Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope began.
And
I loved it. I loved it.
You said that you were supposed to be doing a show at Lincoln Center, but Vinette was going to, before she met Mickey, she was going to put something together?
I had the date at Lincoln Center. Vinette, and I'd been talking about something she wanted to do, she wasn't sure. And then when I came up with bringing Mickey, and she heard these pieces, Vinette goes, "Oh, we'll put together, you got to do a date at Lincoln Center, and we'll try it out and begin it there." And that's how that happened.
And where did Fly Blackbird come in?
Fly Blackbird was, I just auditioned for it. You know,
Uh-huh.
I knew that the choreography was by Callie Beatty, and I wanted to do it. So so I went to audition for the show, and I did it, and I had a wonderful time with that show too. And that was, Mickey was a singer in it. That's what she was. She just had audition and was a singer in it. And that's how I met her, and then I introduced her to Vanette after that.
And where was the Mayfair Theater?
40-something street between, 46th Street, something like that, between Broadway and, and 7th or whatever.
Was it considered a Broadway theater?
It really was a mid-Broadway, off-Broadway theater, they called it. It was a lovely theater.
Building's still there, or it's all
I don't know,
torn
because I
down?
never
Yeah.
looked at it. I don't think so.
The exception and the rule, the prodigal son at the Greenwich Players.
Okay, here's another story. Vanette called me. I had decided I'm giving up theater. Too much work, I don't know, I gotta finish up my college education and then that's it.
Now, when you say you had to finish up, when did you start your college education? Had you started yet? Or
I started, and then I said, but the thing is that I figured I really need to just concentrate on it only.
And the college was Goddard?
Yeah, Goddard College in Plainfield, Vermont.
In Vermont. Uh-huh.
So I knew that all I wanted to do, and then I said, I'll take a couple of courses down here in the city, but I really got to just go through and finish up all of my college. And I had decided no more theater. I'm in my house minding my business with that thought in my mind, I'm going to now just be a student.
And where are you living now?
I'm living in an apartment.
In
No, I had an apartment here in New York at that point.
where in New York?
72nd. No, I was on 88th Street. That's what it was. I was on 88th Street.
West Side.
Yeah, West Side. And Brownstone, that's what I was from. And so I decided, all right, that's it. So now I get a telephone call from Vanette Carroll. She's going to be doing The Prodigal Son, Langston Hughes' Prodigal Son. It was a play, and they were making it into a musical. And so they called in Vanette, and Vanette said, well, I want Glory Van Scott to play the Jezebel. So Vanette calls me, Dawn, would you come down and play the Jezebel? And I didn't have the heart to tell her, I ain't gonna do nothing. I'm gonna stay on in school. That's all I'm gonna do. But I didn't say that. And I said, yeah. So she said, you don't have to audition for me, she said, but I want you to come down because there are two ladies that are producers at this theater, and she wants me to come down and just sing for them so they'll know, da-da-da. I said, okay, like that. So I figured, being a smart mouth, I figured to myself, all right, she wants me to come down and sing, I will go down and I won't take any music. Therefore, if I get down and have any music, if they ask me to sing something, I say I didn't bring any music. That's the end of it. I don't have to take the job. And I had this, again, as I said to you, some weird things happen to me sometimes and yet I'm thrust back into stuff. So I thought I was all set. And do this and that. So I called Mickey and I said, I got to go down here. Vanette wants me to come down and sing. So I go down to the theater. No music in hand. Vanette says, oh, darling, you just sing something. Da, da, da. I said, I didn't bring any music. She said, oh, don't worry about that. The guy, his name was Marion, he can play anything. Just tell him what song. And I said to myself, all right, I'm going to pick up a song in the recesses of my mind that he is definitely not going to know. So since he won't know how to play it because he won't know this song, I'm going to be, excuse expression, scot-free and out of here. So I said, he said, well, what do you play? I said, can you play Every Time It Rains? He said, in what key? I couldn't take it. I can't, everything it faints against me. Everything is against me. And I said, in B flat, And he played it, and oh yes, and it was marvelous. And they said, okay, Vanette said, well, can you come to rehearsal on Monday? I said, no, I can't come to rehearsal on Monday. well, can you come on Tuesday? No, I couldn't come till Wednesday. I could have come on Monday, Tuesday. I could have come the very next that night, but I was like still trying to push things away, right? She said, well, okay, but we open on Saturday. I said, yeah, you said that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to open on Saturday with a preview. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm coming on Wednesday. I go home. I call Mickey. I said, Mickey, I got this job. I don't want to do the job. And she said, Glory, you gave Vanette your word, right? I said, yes, but I don't want to do. She said, well, what are you going to do? You have to do it because you promised her. And I said, I know, and I never break promises, but I was doing all of that stuff, right? And so Mickey's talking to me, so yeah, you can scream all you want on the phone, but you better show up there. I said, yeah, I know. So I showed up. And then I on a Wednesday, and we were going to open for previews on Saturday. And I said, okay. I said, let me see the dancing that's there, that the choreography has been done. You can't lose me on that because it's basically in the Dunham technique. I will know just where to go and what to do as a Jezebel. I just have to get up on my big songs with the lyrics and my dialogue. And so Hattie Winston, who was understudying, she helped me with that. I said, Hattie, you read this part for me, and that's how that works. And so I opened up the first preview on that Saturday. It's been a roll since then.
And were you going in as a replacement, or
no?
That's all
they changed it into a musical.
That's all they were rehearsing was a.
They had rehearsed a play.
Oh, I see.
In comes now Vanette Carroll. They hired her for the director, and she's going to make it into a musical. Langston Hughes musical. So then, of course, Barbara Antier was supposed to be the Jezebel, but Vanette says, no, I want Gloria Van Scott as the Jezebel. And so it's going to be a musical. This is what I want as a Jezebel. And that's how that happened. So there I am again, and then I got such incredible reviews from this thing. So it's insane that again I had put all these mountains in my way, but they got ripped out. No matter what I did, they got pushed aside, and I was to do those things. And so I now know there's no point in my pushing something aside because what's to be for me is there.
The Great White Hope.
I love that with James Earl Jones. Yeah, that was the one where I had a fall. I auditioned for that, and I had the understudy of the acting part of his girlfriend, right? And that stage was a huge stage with a revolving.
This is on Broadway now.
On Broadway, revolving, set. And I was told when I came out to do that monologue, it was at the Alvin Theater. When I do that monologue, there's a pie wedge that opens on that revolving stage. And I was told, and when I'm doing the monologue, I'm blinded by light. So when I turn to go upstage, I have to turn to go upstage, and I have to angle myself, because otherwise I'm going to fall in that pie-shaped hole and fall all the way down to the basement of the theater. And I'm blinded, so I can't see. I've got to make sure I've got it right. So one day I turned and I misstepped and I went down the hole, walking upstage blinded. The stage manager thought, she's dead, And because I did nothing, I didn't say, ee! I didn't do like Phyllis the Cat, ee! I didn't do anything. I just said, I'm falling. And I did nothing. And so when I came down to the bottom in the basement, I was like, falling in a little lump like that, I didn't even get a scratch. Didn't hurt. And the stage manager is ready to lose his mind. He runs down and, oh my God, you're okay. I said, yeah, I didn't do anything. I guess that's why drunks rarely get hurt. They I guess they get inebriated and they fall all soft like a rag doll and they don't get hurt. So now I know what the process is, and I did nothing and I didn't get not a scratch. And I felt a whole like a from the stage to the basement. On concrete.
Did you start that play out of town, or you? No,
we did it here in New York. They did the Broadway show. I think they took a couple of people. They did it when they did it in Washington or something like that. Yeah. But then they started to hire new people.
And this was Ed Sheeran and Jane Alexander and James Earl Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Who, baby? Players Theater.
Who's Who, baby? Who's Who, baby? that was fun because that had some wonderful songs in it. With Robert Richardson produced that and Johnny Brandon's writing, and it was just splendid. I love that. I used to sing a song that was an anti-war song that I used to sing, and I loved it. And one of my solos was that. But then, that had lyrics and had songs that I just absolutely was enamored of singing, because they were the real crux of the anti-war songs and things. That's me with all that stuff. So I just love that show.
And you were at the Players Theater in the Village.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was fun.
Billy No Name.
Billy No Name was the one about Joe Louis being born and winning all kinds of bouts and things like that. But it was Sally Beatty's choreography again, which is incredible choreography. And something that happened with that, with the choreography, is I was a leader of the Black Panther girls, and there were Black Panther boys, and I was the leader of Black. So when I'm in the apex, I'm here like this, and everybody's behind me like that, the other Panthers. And then the do-gooders, which we call the people who sang We Shall Overcome, were on stage like this. So there, We Shall Overcome, and then we're going, burn, baby, burn. You know, we're doing our thing. Now, there's a point where we'd go like this, boom, on stage, the Panthers, like that. And you're facing the audience like that, and the We Shall Overcome people are here. And there's a point where we jump in the audience, off stage, boom, like that, and freeze. And we did, and we froze, and a lady reached up to touch me. She reached up. You should have seen that this was an incredible scene. And we were just frozen. And then the do-gooders are supposed to be singing, and this lady, and we just frozen. This lady reached up and grabbed me here, and of course that freaked us out completely. They see this lady, the ladies grab Glory, and of course we took off. And we ran to the corner on the same flat as the audience. We're over there hiding in the corner thinking, what is she doing? What is she going to do? They're thinking, what's she going to do to Glory? We're over in the corner, crouching, because this woman out of nothing has broken through the wall, okay? And grabbed me up here, and we're over there. Now we need to get back on stage. And the We Shall Overcome people go, where the Panthers go? You know, they go, where the Panthers go? We're in the corner crouching, looking at that lady over there thinking, oh my God, how are we going to run past her and get on the stage? She's going to do something to us. So
Why did she grab you?
I'll tell you what happened. Hiding over there. Oh God, you know, this, that, and the other. And so finally I said, our cue is going to come up. We've got to get back up on stage. And we're whispering to each other in the corner like this. I said, okay. When this happens at her, we run real fast past the lady and hop up on the stage, you know, before she could grab any more of us or something like that, which is what we did. And what happened, she came backstage after the show. I didn't know the woman. And she came to me, and I looked at her when she came up. I said, oh, no, you won't grab me again. And she said, I'm sorry I grabbed you, but I just wanted to tell you that everything was going to be all right. I said, lady, I'm playing a role. That's what we do in the theater. This actress dancer, that's what I'm playing. That's not me in my real life. What's wrong with you? You know, don't come to the theater if you can't decipher what's real and what somebody is doing. Because if somebody's playing this kind of character and that, you want to pop them in the head and they. But that's what happened. I said, okay, yeah. And then the reason she said, oh, everything's okay by me, is because one of my godkids, who happens to be redhead kid, was there. That show was a matinee, and her mother brought her backstage, and I had to kid me up. She said, oh, you're really not prejudiced? I said, lady, where have you been? Like, bye, get out of the dressing room area. It was just crazy. I've never heard of such a thing. Oh, you're really not prejudiced. Did I come out and say I'm prejudiced? I'm playing a role. What is your problem? This is a character.
Miss Truth, play about Sojourner Truth. Mm-hmm. This was Negro Ensemble, 72.
Yeah, I wrote it, and I wrote it and composed it, and I started it as Miss Truth, and I play her from childhood to old age, and Louis Johnson directed it and choreographed it. And it's my favorite of anything is Miss Truth. I think if what I put favorite is Miss Truth, and second is Prodigal Son as a Jezebel. Totally opposite roles.
And you composed it as well.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about that.
It's an interesting thing. When I was in college, I had written this piece because I always, even from childhood, loved Sojourner. And people would say, "Oh, you like Harriet Tubman?" I said, "Yes, Harriet Tubman is fine, but I am Sojourner." I used to say that spiritually, I am Sojourner. It's just the way I feel about the character. And so when I started writing it, I would sit in my house sometimes and I'm writing it, and I felt like she sat on my shoulder while I was writing it. And so then and I did it first as a piece for my English class for college. And so when it came time for me to read it, the professor wanted me to read it. I said, "Oh, okay." And when I read it, I finished reading it, and it got up to going, and people were standing, it was a standing ovation. I said, and it's then that I realized what I had in it. And so then I added all the music, and wrote more music for it, and did all this stuff. And it was a big hit. I mean, it went to Washington, D.C. It was at the Apollo Theater. It got great reviews, just great. And I love playing it because I played her from childhood to when she dies. And Louis Johnson, he's a marvelous director and choreographer, so it was good. So I love it.
You had you finished up your college degree by now, or you were still going back and forth doing the college degree?
I had finished. There were times when I had to be on campus, and other times when I was not, and I was doing various things. When I was doing the Great White Hope, I was still up at Goddard, but I would come down and I would have time off, and really spending the time off to do what I needed to do.
You had not started any grad work yet.
No.
At Goddard. Sing America Sing.
That was Red, White, and Blue Stripes. You know, that bicentennial, that year that we were doing.
Oh, right, 76.
And I went to Washington, D.C. with that. And it was a lot of fun because a lot of the folk singers were singing in that. Jean Ritchie, who played the dulcimer, she was marvelous, and a lot of folk singing in that.
Was this where you met Pete Seeger?
No, I actually met Pete Seeger at the Encampment for Citizenship. And so I knew him from then, but I also, later on, when I started my own children's theater, Pete Seeger came to it and performed in it and all of that, and got very much involved in that sense.
And did Sing America Sing tour the country, or at?
No, we were in Washington, D.C. We were performing there, and that's where we were doing it.
Had you made any international trips yet with dance companies or shows?
Yeah. I had been with the Catherine Dunham Company, and I had been all over Europe with the company as a principal dancer in the company, and everywhere.
The Wiz, the film, 78. You played the woman in the Rolls Royce.
Yeah, the red Rolls Royce lady. Now this is a funny thing, because what happened is that they kept saying to me that when I arrived in the red Rolls Royce, I was going to have this animal, which was a huge cat, not a lion, but a cheetah, and I was going to get out of the car with this cheetah. So I said, well, when are we going to rehearse with this cheetah? A cheetah's a pretty big thing, you know. I'm thinking, munching on me and stuff. So I would go home and take out my cat book. I bought a big cat book, right? Just so I can know something about what this animal does, you know, so I don't make a mistake with it. It does this, it runs 75 miles an hour, and that weighs how much it weighs. I want to know the whole thing so that I wouldn't make any mistakes with the animal. So then they decided, well, when I get out of the car, the cheetah, they weren't sure, because the cheetah has a mercurial personality, so they get a different cat. So then they decided, why don't they do a lynx? I said, a lynx? So once they get rehearsal, I'd come over, let me look up lynx. I'd look up lynx, well, how much this lynx is smaller, but it's, you know. And so then finally they decided they really were going to go with when I come out of the car with a puma. A puma as big as a lion. I said, I can't believe they backed up to huge the animal. A puma. So they got this puma. And I finally said to Sidney Lumet, the director, I said, Sidney, let me tell you something. When I come out of that car, I said, I'm not going to give a rat's behind which way the camera is. If that animal goes left, you think I'm yanking back on him, pulling him right because the camera's over there? That's not happening. I'm not pulling on a wild animal who basically is a wild animal, dragging him where I want him to go if he's trying to go there. So Sidney thought about it. He said, well, maybe they should give the animal to a male model to have. I said, fine. The very night that they were going to film the animal, he was in a cage in the World Trade Center, and the wind was whistling through, cold that night. And I went and looked at him in the cage. He was sleeping. He was feeling good. He was having his nice little nap. But then they had to wake him up, and he was mad when he woke up. And he was so I said, yeah, right. You wanted me to have that, right? Me? So they got him together, and he gave him to the, he was beautiful. Gave him to the male model. And he had it for like a half a second, because he went, that's that big thing he had. That's that, get rid of it. So that was me with that. Going to arrive in my Rolls Royce with that.
So the animal never made it to the film.
I don't remember seeing him in it. They had it there, but I don't know if they might have cut it, because the male model was like this. He was so scared. He had a little leash or something. He was scared. I didn't blame him. That animal was huge. He was gorgeous, though.
Tell us about the Carnegie Hall Katherine Dunham Gala that you did.
Well, I had been with the Dunham Company and all of that, and so Agnes Mill was, by then I'm now in the Mill Company, and she was going to do one of Dunham's works, and she wanted me to go down to East St. Louis, Illinois, where Miss Dunham was living and working with the Performing Arts Training Center, and wanted me to learn. Dunham used to do guitar blues, and she wanted me to learn that. And I said, okay. I go down, and I see Madame. Madame is working with me on it, and so then, before I got on the airplane to come back to New York, I'm sitting talking to Madame, and she said, oh, Glory, I long to see some of the Dunham works again. And I looked right at her and said, you will. I didn't have one nickel to produce anything, do anything, but I said to her, oh, you will, Miss Dunham. You will, Madame. You will see some of the Dunham works. I came. She said, I will. I said, yes, you will. I came right back to New York. I got a National Endowment for the Art, application. And I did not even type in organization. I wrote in a black magic marker, I am the organization. And they said they laughed when she went to Glory for this. But I wound up getting the grant and wound up getting not only the works videotaped, but also a big gala at Carnegie Hall. And I decided I wanted 3 different generations of Dunham dancers to be a part of it. And that's what I did. And so first time out of a barn for something that enormous, but I did it. And after that,
How would you differentiate? I know it's hard to do in just words, but differentiate between the Dunham technique, the Martha Graham technique, and the Beatty technique.
Well, the Beatty technique is really the Dunham technique, because he was a Dunham dancer. He trained with Miss Dunham and started with her. So that would have been the same when I saw it, that's what I was looking at, was the Dunham technique. And he had that was his basic, besides ballet. And Graham is very different. You're in terms of movement, in terms of the way in which you relate to the music and the steps and everything else. It's very different. The thrust, you don't have the same, it's just different. It's like it's different as another language. It's another language from the Dunham technique. And like ballet is one language, Dunham technique is another. They're all dance, but they're different. And languages are different. You're all speaking languages, but they're different. And it's the same thing in terms of dance. Only it's the body language that's the language, rather than...
And when you did most of your studying, which would have been in Chicago before you came to New York, What were you trained in to begin with?
I was
Ballet?
trained in ballet and Sybil Shear, which was another modern dance technique that I loved.
Sybil Shear?
Yeah, I was trained in her because my teacher was trained in that. And then, of course, it was that, and it was also ballet. That's what I was doing. And then I was doing the acting. That's what I was doing, and creative writing and singing. That's what I was doing.
Danza.
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 That's a Sibylla Ford piece of choreography that I dance. That is it's a Moorish piece with with Spanish all the flavor, and it's very beautiful. There's a picture of me in there with that danza.
And you did the Boys Choir of Harlem.
Yeah, that was acting. I was doing acting in that, and Jeffrey Holder directed it and was on Broadway, and it was quite something. It was wonderful. That's when I was doing Phenomenal Woman and stuff like that.
What was Phenomenal Woman?
Poem. I was doing a very famous poem, Phenomenal Woman, and I did that in about 4 other poems.
In the evening with the Boys Choir.
Yeah. It was really, really, really lovely.
Rhythms of the Saints, which was a film.
No, Rhythm of the Saints. It must be something else. Not Rhythm
Okay,
of the Saints.
maybe I got the title wrong here.
Yeah.
The Magic of Catherine Dunham, which was a Alvin Ailey company.
The Magic of Catherine Dunham, I was the project director on that because Alvin wanted to do some of Miss Dunham's works, wanted his company to do some. So I pulled that together as the director and coordinator for Miss Dunham for that. And they came to New York and then worked with the Ailey company so that they could then open and do the Magic of Catherine Dunham.
Final Ladder.
That's the piece I wrote on 9/11. That was now that's a very interesting thing too. I had been asked to come to a friend's church. It was a Episcopalian church, and asked to come to do something for Black History Month because it was a church downtown, and they did not have anybody doing anything like that in the church. And would I come and do some poetry, something? And I said, yes, I would. And I went and I decided to take some Langston Hughes poems. And then I decided, I had just written Final Ladder. I had just written that because of what I felt about 9/11. And I had written that I'd been in California doing something, and I wrote that out, and I came back. And I said, just as I was leaving the house, I said, I'll take that, and I'll read that from the pulpit as well. And I was going to be the sermon that day at that church. And I went down there, and so I came in, and I got up. And when I read the Final Ladder, the people were sitting just looking at me. And I didn't realize then that they had lost maybe 7 of their firemen who were parishioners at that church on 9/11. And and that they had a kind of, some kind of thing that they were showing down there. They had wonderful mementos from those firemen and stuff. And I hadn't realized when I walked in that church that they had such a thing. And there I am, now I'm reading Final Ladder. The piece I wrote is dedicated to, it's all about 9/11 and the firemen. And so they were like, just in awe. So they asked me, they were going to be celebrating 9/11, and would I come back and do it again? And I said, not only would I come back and do it again, but I would develop it into a whole performance piece, at which point I got dancers who would be dancing the firemen, I got singers who would be singing, and another actor opposite me, and the whole thing. And it's a beautiful piece. I've also done it at Symphony Space, and it's a very moving piece. So that was what happened with that. I mean, out of nowhere came this piece like that, because I had to give myself a way of feeling some kind of relief from that, not to feel just so like this every moment. When you hear something, you think something's going to happen. And I had to, and it was by writing the piece called Final Ladder, about the firemen going up the ladder, and when they finally reach it, they're going high, and it's writing that piece that gave me some kind of peace within myself, because it was a horrible thing, to be here. I was here when that happened, and I just didn't know how to get myself so that I could relax and go on a subway again and not think every time the subway stopped, what's going to happen, what's this. And I had to wrestle with myself in that. And it was that my writing that piece that gave me that surcease.
Had you, at this point, been back to get your PhD yet, or you
Yes,
were undergraduate?
Because I had it.
And your PhD work was done at Antioch.
Antioch Union Graduate School.
And what was your stated major or doctoral thesis?
It's philosophy of education and theater arts is what my PhD is. And what I had done is that I had gone to 3 different areas of this country and had worked with children, some very rich, some very poor, some foreign, and wrote 3 different productions, the script, lyrics, and music, directed it, composed it, created the whole thing, and worked with these kids to get them to learn in the way with the methodology that I use for them to really grow within themselves with what I was giving them to do. And I did it in 3 different areas, and that was what I did with that. And it, developed this methodology to do that, which is why I have my Dr. Gloria's Youth Theater now, and I use it in what I'm doing now. My youth theater is in Riverside Church. It's been there more than 10 years. And my kids are doing incredible things. They're graduating. They're going off to Yale University. They're going to Harvard. They're going all over the place. And because they know that they're ultimately responsible for their education. I teach my kids, if you're sitting in a classroom and you don't know what the teacher is saying, then you're responsible. Because you are not going to just sit there and let it go over your head. You're going to go to that teacher and say, I don't know what you're talking about. So how can you help me get this so that I understand it? And you're going to let your parents know. You're not going to just sit there and let your life slip away like that because you have not told anybody that you're in this predicament. And it doesn't need to have to wait for you parents to get a note, oh, they're failing. No, you don't let yourself get to that position. So I work with my kids in this way, but I do it in the creative arts. But they know. We have times where my kids, Dr. Gloria's Youth Theater, they sit down and they say, oh, we have a group meeting. What's wrong? What did you do in school? What did this? What's what? And they talk about everything. And you discuss it with them, and they discuss it, and it's open for everyone.
Had you started your program at Ethical Culture before you did your PhD or after?
No, after I had done it.
After.
Yeah.
And tell us about the program at Ethical Culture.
Well, that was also the youth theater. I started one there, and then I did it for some years, and it was wonderful. But the thing is that all the professionals kept saying, well, you're not writing things for us to do anymore, and we miss that, and you still with those kids. I said, well, kids are the future. Yeah, but we're here now, we need ours too. So then I stopped working with kids at that point. And then I just was doing a lot of different shows, and was doing a lot of concerts and doing all of that and that was when I did so many evenings of spirituals and doing all of that and creating other things, We Be Women. That's when a lot of those things came, or producing other dance companies. That's when I was doing all of that. And then I would go and see some children something, and I go, oh no, I've got to get back with my youth theater. And I did, and I'm very happy that I did, because I write their productions. I direct them and choreograph them, and they're soaring from it.
And where are you working with your youth theater now? At Riverside Church?
Yeah, there's a theater there. Riverside Theater. You should listen. Riverside Theater produces a lot of different shows and different things that happen there. It's a wonderful theater space.
And they have obviously they have a theater space in.
They have a theater.
Yeah.
It's an absolute theater.
Yeah.
Wonderful theater.
Let's talk a little bit more about Phenomenal Woman, which and the show you did on Broadway with the Harlem Boys Choir.
Yes, I did Phenomenal Woman, which was Maya Angelou, the poet. It was her piece, Phenomenal Woman. And it was so successful, that piece, that the Voice Choir of Harlem used to stand in the wings and watch me do it every night. And so then what started to happen is that sometimes when I leave the theater, or when I'm coming to the theater, I'm minding my own business, I'm just going down the street, I remember having a group of boys chasing me, and I looked and I said, they called me, hey, and I went, I don't know why and I took off running. And then they, after I started running for a little bit, they realized I was frightened probably, and they said, phenomenal woman. Then I stopped. I knew they had seen me doing that on Broadway and connected that. So that piece it's a beautiful piece, too, that Maya Angelou wrote. She's a beautiful poet. But I just wanted to put that's who wrote that piece, and it's a magnificent piece.
Tell us about your work with affiliated artists.
Affiliated artists, I had gotten a call from them. Somebody had told them about me, and so I said, oh, okay, I'll go and I'll audition for them. And I did, as an actress, to be an actress, and I was delighted. It's one of those things. It was as important to me as Abraham Lincoln Center was, where I studied as a kid and started and got all the arts. The affiliate artist program with me, I was a professional performer, actor, singer, dancer. I was already, doing things. But this gave me something more, because I went to areas that I would never have gone to. I was attached to Philadelphia. And when I was attached to Philadelphia, I was to do something with an organization. I was taken by the coordinator to a hospital that's for the incurables. And I thought, what? And so when I walked in there, the first thing I see is this young man about 20 years old on a gurney, and I'm looking at his face, he's on a gurney, but there are no legs there. He'd been in a war, and he was going to be there, for the he was going to stay there the rest of his life. And I looked at him, and so then I looked around and saw other people like that, and my head started to pound. And I said, I'm getting a headache. And I sat down and I said, why are you getting a headache? If they're here in the condition they're in, what is your problem with getting a headache? Clear that headache. You've come here to do an a performance thing for them, and that is what you will do. It's not about you, it's about them. And I just got myself together, and I started to perform for them. And, you sing, you act, you do all these things. And it makes, if you can come out of yourself, you can get rid of a lot of things that people carry as baggage that has nothing to do with having life continue. And you can help somebody else's life to be a little better if you can come out of yourself. But you've got to know you have to come out of yourself to do that. You can't say, oh, I got a headache. What does that mean? Your headache is nothing compared to what I'm looking at that's before me. And now I've come, and then the other thing that affiliate artists did was they had me go to a senior citizens home where they had a lot of people who lived in the senior citizens home. So they brought them in a little church. They brought them into the little chapel in that place. And so I walked in, and I'm looking at maybe 100 really old, sick seniors. And I look, and I'm supposed to do what's like a 40-minute, it's called informants, which means I do some acting, you do something. And I said to them, I'm not going to do any acting. I said to myself, I'm going to sing to them. I said, would you like to hear me sing? Because I looked at them, and they looked at me. All of a sudden, all of this is suddenly waking up. Because I said, would you? I didn't just start singing. I said, would you like to? I'm addressing each of them. Would you like me to do this for you? And they're looking, yes. And I sang some things. I said, how would you like to sing some songs? I know you probably come from so many places. Would you like to sing something? All of a sudden, the whole room came alive. They came up, they sang Irish songs to me, they sang German songs to me. They first get up there and they start to sing. Somebody had touched them back in their lives that they've had. It's like, I'm not dead. I'm still here. And I think I wrote something about my book called I'm Still Here. And they are. I'm still here. They sang of the childhood, of this, of that. I will never forget that. I will never forget having the honor of being shown that, so that I would know when I come across something like this what to do. And also realize those people are just shrouded by covered because nobody's paying them any attention. You've already said, well, they're going to die soon, so you got them in, and that isn't what's going on. They're there looking at you, but you're not paying them any real attention. So that was one part of that. The other was that I was supposed to go to a hospital. I did. I went to this hospital. I'm supposed to perform something for some patients. They didn't have a room for the patients. They had about 40 of them, I guess, or something. They didn't have any room for them, for any space. So they said, and these were inpatients, and so, I could have said, well, listen, I'll go back home. I'm not, because then so okay, I could go back to the hotel or what I do. And instead, they said, well, what we do have is right outside of the emergency room. I'm looking at right outside of the emergency room. Yes, that's the space we have. I said, well, let me see it. I looked at it. I said, okay, you bring the patients down. And I said to myself, and I told them, the patient's back will be to the emergency room. I, as the actress standing here, will see everything that happens that's going into that emergency room. Cops bringing in people, this, that, and the other, and on gurneys and people hanging there. I can see that, but I also knew as an actress I would know how to wash that away from me, that I won't see that. I'm going to do what I do as the actress and become the character I need to become and do what I came to do for them. Because they could not do that. I knew if I had them turn the other way, that'd be the worst thing I could possibly do. So what I did was I just said, okay, and I did my acting for them with their facing me and me facing the gurneys and everything going in and out. And I then decided, something? I could perform outside of a foxhole, in a foxhole. Because this is the affiliate artist program has given me an added dimension of something I never knew that I would need or that I would experience. It gave me that. And so that I became a much better person, a bigger person as an artist. I mean, I grew. I wouldn't have thought that I'd have that kind of growth at that stage of my life or something like that. It was phenomenal. And then I went also to a hospital, and they had this little boy, and he was autistic, and the nurses were sitting with about 12 autistic kids, and kids who didn't have autism as well. And I had a little chair, and I sat, and I was going to read to them, and I started to, and then this little boy starts to cry. He was like 4 years old. For some reason, I put my book down, I got up, and I went over, and I picked him up in my arms, and I came back to my chair, and I sat down with him in my arms. And I said to him, would you like me to sing you a song? He went, mm-hmm. I said, and then I can read a little poem for you. Mm-hmm. The nurses were crying. That child had never responded to anybody. And I didn't know he was autistic. I just was picking up a child that was crying, and I just, and he sat there, snuggled up to me, and I read to him, I sang, and the rest of them heard it as well as like that, and they only told me afterwards. But, and I have to thank the Affiliate Artist Program for exposing me in such a way as an artist that I would open up even more than I ever even dreamed. That's another thing that you never know where you're going to go. And that's the program that gave me all of that, with the seniors who were ill, and it just did all of that.
And when you joined the Affiliated Artists Program, you put together a show or a couple of shows you can possibly do when you go into these communities.
You put together, you have your 40-minute thing that you put together.
And they're about you, or they're about different themes?
Whatever, as an actress, you figure out what things you want to do. And and you do what's called an informants, and you ask them questions too, and they can ask you questions. And one where John Deere, I went out to, where was I? In the Midwest someplace, and I was They put a hard hat on me. They drove me around in there, so I could look at how they worked and with all the machines and the people that work online and all that. Never seen anything like that. And I was like fascinated by it. Then they shut the line down for like 40 minutes. They'd never done that before. And the people could sit and they could have their lunch, and then I was going to perform for them. And they're looking, here's a real live actress in their midst. And I'm thinking, there are real live people who work on machines that I have never seen, and they think they're learning, I'm learning, And it was phenomenal. And they would eat, and then they'd ask you questions. Well, as an actress, do you do this? And do you do this as a performer? And what do you feel? And da-da-da. And how do you feel being here with us? And all of that. It's the affiliate artist program that gave me those things. Because they put you in unusual situations and things that you would normally not get. Sure, it's easy to put you in a theater, you're used to that, right? You put you for a TV, theater, all of that stuff, you're used to that. This was different.
You also worked with Bucknell.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
That's an interesting thing that I got a call, I get these telephone calls, that they were doing something at Bucknell University, and they had the Pennsylvania Governor School for the Arts, which is what that summer program they have is, and wanted me to come and do something for a couple of days with some students. And so I said, well, okay, and I flew out there, and I was there for 5 days, and I put up some production with them. I created something for them. So they asked me, would I come back and work every summer with the Pennsylvania Governor School for the Arts in theater, in the drama department. So I liked what I was feeling, the way in which I was working. I said, sure. And then knowing you're going to have kids from all over Pennsylvania coming in, and you can, it's great. And so that's when I began that at Bucknell University. And the kids are wonderful. Kevin Bacon was one of my first students. And he was on the line of, let's say, 10, 15, top 10 or whatever. He's in that top 10, but there was one kid that I'll never forget. His name was Richie. He was so gifted. Not only could he direct beautifully, he was wonderful with acting, and he was great with his body plastic, but he said that his parents wanted him to become a priest, and he had a brother. And I remember saying to him, what do you mean they want you to become a priest? You have all this talent. What priest? I said, your brother, stick him up there. You should have seen me. I said, if you really speak to your parents, stick the brother up there, let him be the priest. You can't be a priest. You have all this talent. And I don't know when I left school what finally really did happen to him, but he was phenomenal. And I'm thinking, no, the priest, you don't need to have this talent to be a priest. You're a performer, you're an artist. The priest is great, but let your brother do the priest number. I was pushing the brother up here.
You did an evening of spirituals at Carnegie Hall.
I did many, maybe 8 different times. I did evenings of spirituals. With what I had done is that I would listen to singers singing when I was doing shows, and they had these gloriously trained voices that were classically trained, but they sang spirituals, and they'd come through the church situation, and they sang these beautiful voices. So I decided, and I love spirituals, it's my favorite music is spirituals, and I decided I'm going to start producing evenings of spirituals. And so I hired me a soprano and bass and mezzo and all of this, and started doing evenings of spirituals and sitting down deciding which spirituals they're going to sing, listening to them, and absolutely taking them various places to sing and hiring singers. I began to hire singers. I wasn't just hiring dancers, I began hiring singers. So all of it is just a way of multiplying what you're doing, because that's what's needed. And you're paying attention to what's needed, and you do it.
We Be Women.
That was a title that just came to my head, that We Be Women, and I had women choreographers and doing all kinds of things which had to do with women and women's problems and all kinds of things like that. And I wrote a lot of things about that, and things were choreographed from it and all that. So it was wonderful. The fact is, I may do it again this coming year. It's really wonderful.
You had a few touring shows, Finian's Rainbow, and A Funny Thing Happened with the Forum.
Yeah. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum had something happen that was really quite something. We were in, I think we were in Gaithersburg, Maryland, in a big tent, like 2,000 people, something like that, and theater in the round, right? And I was one of the courtesans, and we were always up at the top of the ramp, and there's a certain point where Jerry Lester was playing Suitorless or something, where you run down on stage, and the girls, we would come like that, the ones of us who were playing the courtesans. One day, when he's talking about eunuchs, the dialogues, they're talking about eunuchs. And all of a sudden, this guy comes running down the aisle from the audience saying, "Stop talking about eunuchs." He says, "I'm a eunuch." So, of course, people freeze. They think that's part of the show. But the people on stage are going like, "Wait a minute, we have this bird on stage, we got to get him off." What are we going to do? And so they said, oh, stop, And so he's starting, so they're trying to work around, say something, try to get him off the stage, and now his mother comes down. She runs down. "You can't talk about my son. He's a eunuch. How dare you?" So she runs down to get on the stage. So the two actors who are down there like, "What will we do? What's going on?" like that. And then they're trying to say their lines, and there's a point where they say their lines where the courtesans, that's us, we're supposed to come down. And I'm going, like the other girls are in there, one there, one there. I'm going, I'm not going down in that melee. I don't know what's going on. That guy could pull out a gun and start blasting away at anybody who's right there. And it's a huge thing. I said, I'm going like this. No. They've got to clean that up. You don't go into a situation like that. And so finally the guards and the theater ran, because people thought it was all part of the show. They don't know from that show unless you know the show. And so down comes the guards and police and stuff, and they get the lady up. She said, "Yes, she's yelling. Stop screaming about my son, the eunuch." And we're up there going like this, And so finally, after they got him out, then I said, okay, then we went down and resumed what we would resume. But you can get things that happen, and you have got to handle it. You can't put yourself in danger. You can't put other people in danger. You can't panic on it. You've got to concentrate and figure out what to do. Like, why would we go down into that situation which could become volatile, worse than what it was when the guy was screaming? And no, you just stay right where we are, because this is not our cue.
The Four Marys.
The Four Marys is Agnes DeMille's ballet. It was very beautiful. It was a wonderful ballet. That was with the original Four Marys, me, Carmen de Lavallade, Judith Jameson, and Cleo Quitman. We were the original Four Marys. Agnes choreographed that ballet for us. And it was very beautiful. A very beautiful number, and I think of it often. I'll think about that ballet.
Veracruzana.
That's a Dunham one, which is really Spanish. That was Dunham's, yeah. Veracruzana, very Spanish and beautiful.
Step Lively.
Oh, Step Lively Boys is the name of one of the songs that Mickey Grant wrote. When we did a show, Bury the Dead, and it was based on Bury the Dead, which was I've forgotten the name of the author of that, and they started calling it Step Lively Boys, and Mickey Grant was writing the music for that, and she wrote this piece called Step Lively Boys, about it's an anti-war piece too, and it's that show that I love so much too, because I sang this song Universe in Mourning, because what was happening with Vietnam and this place and all the other stuff. She's a marvelous composer. She's one of my favorites. She really is.
We Go Round.
May We Go Round.
May We Go Round.
That was a piece that I did, directed at Freedom Theater in Philadelphia. That was my favorite theater in Philadelphia. And May We Go Round.
And where was Freedom Theater in Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia on, what is that street? I've forgotten the street. But it was a lovely theater. Been there forever. And I was brought to that theater because as an affiliate artist, I was taken to the Walnut Street Theater when I came to Philadelphia first. And they had a coordinator there who would take me to other places and things of this sort. And so there was a man who was the benefactor at the Walnut Street Theater who said, "You have to go over to Freedom Theater and see what they're doing with those kids over there. You will love it." And I said, okay, I didn't know anything about Freedom Theater at that point. So I went with him over there and I saw those kids, how they were working, and that was it. From then on, I used to go and do work for them, create for them, direct for them, and everything else, and teach for them. Marvelous.
Poetic suite with music.
And dance on Arabs and Israelis. That piece, I had been in Israel, and I had observed so much and seen so much, and I came back and I wrote this piece called Poetic Suite with Music and Dance on Arabs and Israelis. And I was doing the Great White Hope at that point. And so Max Wright, who just died not too long ago, I hired him as one of the narrators in there along with me, and then I was playing an Arab, different people were playing different roles and things of that sort. And I remember James Earl Jones came to that, and he loved it. And I had, and I talked, and it's so funny because I even said to my dad at the time when I had written that piece, I said, I feel a little apprehensive, and I don't feel apprehensive about things that I write. I say what I have to say, and that's it. But I was, because I was thinking, you know, you never know what people have in their own minds about things, and you say something about this, because I was writing that Israel, Palestine, you are my country too, and I'm here, so you could think if somebody gets some weird idea and is angry or something. So he said, you have written the truth of what it is? I said, yes. Then that's what you put. That's what you do, which I did. And the lines are going all the way down the Amsterdam Avenue with the people waiting to get into that piece, which whenever I play that piece, they're lined up to come in there. And I remember one man coming in, and he was talking to me. He said afterwards, he said, oh, well, you were writing about the Arabs and the Jews, and how come you're writing about them? And I looked right at him. I said, well, what do you mean, why am I writing about them? They're people in the world, and I'm a writer, and that's what I'm writing. And he said, yes, but you're not Jewish. I said, no, Norman Mailer is not black or Native American, but he writes about it. So what are you talking about? As a writer, you write about what your experiences are, and you experience these things and share these things and find out, and you write. And it has nothing to do with what your color is or your religion. If you see something, you write it. And he said, oh.
We didn't talk about the Sylvia Fort dance.
Sevilla Fort.
The Sevilla Fort, sorry.
Yeah.
And the Sevilla Suite.
Yeah. Sevilla Fort was a teacher who came out of Seattle, Washington. And she was one of the teachers that she had joined the Dunham Company, and then she finally formed her own company. And it was a great school. It was a great school, and lots of students went there, including James Dean. They came from everywhere. Marlon Brando, they all came into that school. And so she taught the Dunham technique, and when she died, I created the Sevilla Suite. I wrote this whole piece on her, and it was performed at Library of Performing Arts. It was performed at Symphony Space, different places. So it's a big piece. When I write things, I'll write, and maybe I'll write something that's a poem, and then suddenly I develop it and it becomes a whole script. And then I'm adding dance, and then I'm adding music, writing music, and then all of a sudden you've got a big piece. Because it doesn't stop just because you think you've written it, you think it's right, because other things happen in your mind and you want to add more to it.
You were a cousin of
No, Emmett Till.
Emmett Till, yes.
Yeah.
Who was from
Yeah, he was from
Chicago. And you also worked a little bit with the Hale House?
No. Abraham Lincoln Center. I didn't work with Hale House.
Oh, okay. But you knew...
I knew about Hale House. Everybody knew about Hale House.
Yeah. Oh. Is there anything else we should talk about that I missed?
Let's see. Let me see. Oh, you should talk about when one is confronted with prejudice in the business. I can remember I can remember a production for TV that had hired, it was on Channel 2, had hired Arthur Mitchell, me, Louis Johnson, um, Walter Nixon, lots of Mary Hinkson. There were a lot of us that had been hired for it. And they were doing this piece on TV. And we had not seen the script, but they'd been working on the choreography, and the choreography was marvelous because it was being choreographed by Arthur and someone else, I can't forgotten. But so we finally said, well, we really need to see the script or hear the music too. And of course, they finally said, well, okay. And so when we sat down to listen to it, it was so distressing to hear them change lyrics of one of the work songs that were not the correct lyrics. And we said, well, we're not doing that. So we said, we're not doing this piece. And it was like 2 days before they're supposed to film. Then we retired to the back of the room, all of us, we dancers of color, and they had to, they said, well, go. They had to really change the whole thing around. I said, did you ever consider that we were going to let you sing those lyrics? You know, it's just absolutely prejudicial, prejudice, and we're not going to take that. And so they changed the lyrics, and then, of course, the show went on. It was a big show. It was no little thing. It was on CBS. It was a look up and live. That's what it was, look up and live. So, but we just absolutely went, no, remove yourself out of the picture, so you do what you have to do. And this is what happens with anything. If you see, you can't be afraid. You can't be afraid that you're going to lose a job. There's always another job. And I was never brought up to be afraid of something in terms of, if I do this, they may fire me or this. That never has ever even entered my mind. When I don't like something and I know it's wrong, I'm going to respond to it. I'm not going to sit on it. I sat, when I was doing Kwamina, that was something that happened that historically could never be possible. That the lead woman was saying she's going to teach we're all supposed to be playing African women, teach them how to cook. She's English. You think that English woman's going to teach those African women how to cook? If you've got a big show, this is in Kwamina, you've got to have some reality here. And I'm listening to this in the dialogue, and I find I said something about it. They didn't do anything about it. I said, that can't happen. That would never happen, and it's an insult. And so nobody did anything about it. We're in Toronto, and I got up off the stage in rehearsal and went to my dressing room. Agnes Mills started having a fit. Where's my principal dancer? She's up in the dressing room. Somebody go and talk to her. What's going on? And so they sent the stage manager up. I said, why did you come up here? I have said what I had to say about those particular lines. It does not work, and I will not sit there and have dirt thrown in my face listening to that when I know it's wrong. And it's back from some other era that you would have had. And so finally they had to send, Agnes Mills screaming and told them to send Deliager, not Deliager, I've forgotten his name, who is the producer. He had to come upstairs, and he came to me. I said, what do you want? He said, well, you left the stage, and Agnes told me, da-da-da-da. I said, well, this is the deal. I will not be on stage as long as that's being said. It is wrong. And I cannot suffer it. And I've said something about it, and nothing has happened to change it. Therefore, I will absent myself from that. They changed it. He said, oh, when I finally made it, he could understand. They changed it. The writer he thought he had it in it. You take that out. So the thing is with anything is that if you're going to live in fear, then you will never grow, and you will never live the kind of life you were supposed to live. You're never supposed to live a life in fear. You're supposed to live your life and not be afraid. And I did it also with another show. I got this script, and I'm supposed to leave. I used to sing folk songs up in the Catskills and go away and do that for a weekend. And I had a manager that said to me, oh, here's this script, you're going to do this, and this part's the lead female role, da-da-da-da-da. And so I get on the bus that's taking me up to the Catskills, and I'm starting to read the script, and I had my pianist with me. I almost just came through that bus. I was so upset with the dialogue that was there. And I called the manager and I told her, I can't do this play. It's in this musical. It's going to be done at the St. Louis Muni Opera, and I am not doing it. I will not do that part. And so she said, well, can't you see your way of doing it? I said, look, I can't see my way of doing this. It's awful. And so I called my godmother, who is the director of the National Committee Against Discrimination in Housing, and then I called CORE and all of that stuff. They put an injunction on that theater and told them, you have to change that or you cannot do this play this way, which this is. And so the organization decided, the opera company, well, she must have had another job. They were going to call me before the equity. I go before equity and I sit there and they said, well, did you have another job? I said, no, I didn't have another job. Didn't even have one on the horizon, but I would not take that. And so they looked and they, well, why didn't you call us first? I said, Actors Equity is not a civil rights noise at a civil liberties organization. Therefore, I went who handles those things and they handled it, and you see, voila, we got the results we wanted. They had to change the whole thing in order for it to get done. Great big opera company, no. So the thing is that I was brought up this way, and I was never brought up to be afraid of something. It's right, it's right. There's no half right. It's right or it's not in this kind of situation when it has to do with trying to belittle people in any way. You don't do it, I don't care who it is, you don't allow that to happen. So the whole business of doing civil rights and civil liberties, it involves itself in what you do in your creativity, and you have to be aware of that. And you have to handle it, and you cannot be afraid, and you've got to do what you need to do.
Where do you see the whole business of off-Broadway and education going now?
I think off-Broadway is the key to education in the way that Broadway costs so much more money to do things in Broadway. And if they use off-Broadway to even get things started, maybe by then somebody will want to put more money into that. But off-Broadway is absolutely a necessary part of the creative arts. It has to be there. It's a beautiful part of it. I mean, I don't think I've ever had the excitement going toward a Broadway show that I have when I was doing an off-Broadway show. Because it's like you're going in there, but it's like it's still creating. Oh, this is this. It's always excitement in there, in the off-Broadway. Always was.
Wonderful. Anything else you'd like to say before we finish this interview?
No, but just thank you for having me, and thank you for having my friends, the other artists, the Woody Kings and the Mickey Grants, and all the ones that you have on the list, because I was marking off how many were friends of mine and they were on that list, and I was delighted.
This is your book, Glory, A Life Among Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And this just came out.
Great.
Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you for having me.